Tape number 8, interview with Mr. Larry Pick, December the 8th, 1996. You mentioned you saw your first Russians. Did you have much contact with Russians after that?
I know the only thing is I understood a little bit Russian because I spoke Czech. So Konya was was horses. I remember when they came in occupied, they asked the farmer whether he has space for for their horses, and I could translate that. That I remember. No, I did not have much contact. They got the only thing they were supplied with was some very coarse pipe tobacco, which they rolled in newspaper into cigarettes, and some bread. Everything else they took from the German farmers. Probably something what the German soldiers did in Russia too, so they only got even with them.
How'd they treat you?
They didn't know what to do with us. I mean, we were not Russians. I mean, there were people who had much worse experience. If they came from Latvia or so, you were pressed into the Russian army or so. But we made them to understand that we were Jews, we were prisoners against the Germans, and that we were their friends, and Germans were our enemies. We were treated as enemies of the Germans.
Where did you go after that? You said your
I
friend...
went back to Brno. I went back to Brno.
How? How did you get to Brno?
By hitchhiking, by wherever I could, a train. I mean, things where it was right after a war, after a horrible war, very disorganized. You didn't have money, you still went on the train. People asked you for the ticket, you didn't have. I had some German marks which were given to me by that mayor of that village. He was glad to get rid of us. So he gave me just 100 marks or whatever it was. I arrived in Brno and I was looking for some things my parents had hidden with checks. I got nothing back. I didn't find it. I didn't find the people. I didn't. Some I found, but it gets too long a story. From there, I went to Vienna. I was looking for my two friends, Fritz and Hager, and also for a girl. Without going into detail, she had survived. And from there, I went to Stuttgart. In Stuttgart, I was in a displaced person camp. In Stuttgart, I arrived and I walked on the streets when somebody recognized me. A fellow who was not Jewish, but his father had been Jewish. He was only for 3 months in a work camp. He was never sent. He was brought up Gentile. He said, your brother was here. He's in the American army. He's looking for you. And he gave me his address because my brother said, if anybody finds me, if I'm alive, or my parents, he didn't know my parents were dead. And I found out that my brother was stationed about 2 hours, 3 hours ride by car from Stuttgart in a town called Seckenheim, which is between Heidelberg and Mannheim.
Seckenheim?
Seckenheim, Seckenheim, which was a camp where high political prisoners were kept. My brother, of course, speaking perfect German, was war criminal interrogator. I did not know how to get to Seckenheim when an officer came in the DP camp who had heard about it. He says he's going to Holland, and if he wants me to, he's going on the Reichsautobahn, on the highway, and he would let me off. He's going north towards that direction. And I was only too happy to agree. He let me off in Heidelberg, and he found out that there is a streetcar going from Heidelberg to Seckenheim. Unfortunately, it was a Sunday, and the streetcar was not running. So I walked. It's quite a walk. I don't know how many hours. Quite a walk. And I was hungry. I took some half-ripe fruit from the trees, from farms I passed by. until I got to Seichenheim. I looked around. It's a very small town, and I saw a big Kaserne again, a big building. And there was a big black soldier, looked to me like he's 8 foot high, standing there with his rifle slung. He was guard at the entrance. And there was a non-fraternization law in effect, officially in effect. American GIs troops could not fraternize with German civilians. So when I came, I spoke a little English, not too much. He probably didn't understand me. He pushed me away with his rifle butt. When an officer came up who spoke perfect German, who happened to be Jewish, I found out later, and asked me in German what I want. And I said, I'm looking for my brother. And I gave him his name. He said, it's all right, it's one of his boys. Sure, he knows my brother. My brother was a sergeant. He said, you can come in, but you can't get out as a civilian because we have a lot of war criminals here. And he took me to my brother's room, where I saw my picture on the cot, and my parents' picture, and his girlfriend. And my brother didn't show up, and some of his fellows who shared a room with him, soldiers, came in. I introduced myself. They were very nice to me. None of them was Jewish. They all spoke perfect German. They must have been of German descent, or some spoke perfect German. They took me to the mess hall, and my brother likes to tell the story. I don't think it's true. It was like in a cafeteria style, and I took one from everything. My brother claims I took the ice cream together with the gravy. I took everything, and I had an unbelievable 1 or 2 heaped plates, and I ate everything. And my brother didn't come, and the other fellows went to sleep on the cot, and I went to sleep on my brother's cot. I was tired. I had walked. And when somebody suddenly pulled my leg, and when I awoke, it was my brother who had amused himself, whatever, and had come home late. And he, according to him, it was hard for him to believe. So he took me down to his office again. They gave me a kind of uniform. It wasn't actually an American uniform. It was a British jacket and an American uniform, and what do I know? But I felt very good. I was free. I was free, and I had enough to eat, and I didn't have to be afraid to be killed the next minute.
Where did you remain with your brother, or how
I
long?
remained with my brother for a few days when he got permission to go back with me in his jeep, or he got a jeep, to take me back to the UNRWA camp, displaced person camp in Stuttgart. He visited me from time to time. It was now fall of 1945, and before Christmas, a lot of GIs were discharged. And my brother was one of them. He returned to the United States in November or December 1945. I stayed behind in the UNRWA camp. I had to start, I had got myself 2 jobs. I worked for the United States military government as the secretary of the chief officer for politics and elections. Sounds very big. Not because I'm so smart, but I spoke the slang of the town where we were, and they could trust me completely. So I was sent to, as the observer, to political meetings of the Germans, of the new parties. And in order to not to arrive with any debts in the United States, I worked for 2 or 3 days a week for the American Joint Distribution Committee as a kind of chauffeur. in 1945, in 46, I was ready to come to the United States. In fact, my boss at the military government, Richard Scammon, was friendly with the American consul in Stuttgart, and he had assured me that on the first transport out I will be on. But since my brother nixed in a way, because at that time he was thinking about re-enlisting and joining what was known at that time the OSS, the Office for Strategic Services, and he wouldn't know where he would be shipped to. So I continued staying in Stuttgart, working at both places, until my brother made up his mind that he wouldn't do it, that he would stay. And I actually arrived here with an expired visa.
On an expired.
Well, I was also chauffeuring around the vice consuls of the American consulate, because we try to be good friends with the American consulate, so we get more numbers, more visas. And one day I had him in my car and we started to talk, but at that time my English got a little better. And I said to him, you know what it would have meant to me to have an American vice consul sitting next to me before the war. I mean, he was a young guy. I mean, they took him out of college or when they graduated. And he said to me, are you ready to go? And I explained to him, he said, when did you get your visa? And I told him 3 months ago, 3.5. He said, listen, visas are only good for 4 months. You better get going, man. And I followed his advice, and I was on American territory on the ship. It was an American troop transporter when my visa expired, and nobody paid attention. I mean, when I arrived here, it was a troop transport, the SS Marine Purge. Pier 88, August 31st, 1946. My brother was in the hospital. A friend of mine, Walter Gondel, and second cousin, who in the meantime died, and his wife picked me up at the pier. And my brother just had some food poisoning, nothing serious. I got a job. There was no such thing as welfare or food stamps. You worked. I got myself a job in Brooklyn, working as a polisher of electric irons. The upper part of an electric iron, after it's chrome-bladed, it has to be polished. They didn't have an exhaust. Again, there was no environmental protection. And when I complained to the union, union said, you want me to march everybody out of the factory, everybody will be without work. So of course I said no. I had a job for about 3-4 weeks. When I got another job again as a polisher in Harlem, 128th Street in the basement on Park Avenue. From there, my brother in the meantime had gone to Mexico, where his childhood sweetheart lived. And he got married to her in January 1947. He has his 50th wedding anniversary next month. I attended that wedding. There was a little story which I want to bring in, which might be of interest. I obtained an exit permit, which was good for leaving the United States and re-entering the United States. When we got to the border, my brother had bought a car, and a friend was along. We drove to Texas. When we got to the border, there was no problem at the American checkpoint. My visa was stamped. And when we got to Mexico, the Mexican side, we were told that a man in charge had left for the weekend, the Mexican custom officer, and I needed a special permission, a special stamp and guarantee which my friend had given, and he wouldn't be back until Monday morning. So my brother had some belongings in the car, a wedding gift, a lamp, which at that time he thought was meant to him a lot. he said to me, we are here already with all the things, without paying duty. Why don't you go back to the American side and stay there until Monday morning, and I meet you at the border when this Mexican custom official will be back. And I walked across the bridge to Rio Grande, and there was a tall Texan custom agent. His eyes half closed, a lot of Mexicans crossing the border. He hardly looked. And I had passed him already with my visa in my hand when he called me back. And he spoke to me. He didn't know what to do with me. And I told him that we had gone inside Mexico to a second border point, which my brother, my brother was a GI and he was a little cocky. And when the Mexicans said to him, he wouldn't let me in because the stamp is missing of that particular officer. He just said to me and to a friend, go back in the car, and he drove off into Mexico. And about 10, 15 kilometers, I had a second checkpoint, and we had to stop, otherwise we'd have run somebody over. We turned back. And when I crossed that bridge over the Rio Grande into Laredo, that American custom officer asked me where I have been, what I did. I told him they sent us back at the second checking point because that officer was not there to give me the stamp. He didn't know what to do with me, and he took me inside that little house which was there, and he spoke to his officer. And the officer looked at me and he said, now listen very carefully. I said before, your English is very good. Your English isn't so good. Listen carefully. That visa that you have, that exit and re-entry permit, is only good for one time. And if you go further than 3 miles from the United States border, that means you have exited the United States and you have re-entering it, and it's finished, that visa. You understand what I'm telling you? I said, yes, I understand. So let me ask you again, how far did you go in? I said, 2 miles about. He said, oh, that's completely different. And he handed me back my, some guy, some Texan.
How did you meet your wife?
I met my wife. I worked for a fellow in, I was a one-man outfit. The boss and I repaired measuring machines, brought them to the post office, sold them, and my wife was a friend of his daughter, and we met at his daughter's wedding.
And you have
We have one child.
One child.
We have one child who lives in California with a very good job, works very hard. I'm very proud of her. She is national sales manager, travels a lot, and it left my experience left a little scar on her too, because there are little things which I forgot or didn't want to go into. I have a fetish about food. I can't see any food wasted. I clean my plate. And when she was a little child, I tried to tell her, take as much as you want, but what you put on your plate, you have to eat, which is sometimes not so easy for a little child to know how much you can eat, and many other things. She missed some of the laughter, I guess.
I was going to ask you how your own experiences impacted on raising your child.
We lost 2 babies prematurely, and we made at that time medical history having her. Medicine wasn't as advanced as it is today. My child, I put a lot of emphasis just on education, because I had learned the only thing they cannot take away from you is your education. They can take away from you your car or your stamp collection or your bicycle or whatever it is, But what's in your head, unless they kill you, nobody can take away. So she went to a private school. We always wanted the best of education. Even my wife, when I married her, she only had a few points for her bachelor degree, and she has now a PhD from Columbia. Because I more or less wanted her to make up for my lack of education, maybe subconsciously. But education is something I value a great deal, and the advice I have for anybody is learn as much as possible. You never know in life how handy it comes in. Even magic tricks can come in my life.
How much does your daughter know about your experiences?
In the beginning, very little, very, very little. She took some Holocaust studies in Hebrew High School, and even in Union College, she took a Holocaust study course. She knows quite a bit later on. In the beginning, I didn't talk about it at all. Later on, I was interviewed for a tape for a book to be written about Riga. I think she listened to that tape. I'm not sure. It's not complete anyhow. Somehow it got lost, part of it.
Did she ask questions?
Yes, she asked questions.
Did
Where
you
was
answer?
God when my grandparents were pushed in the oven? And I haven't answered it yet.
Did you tell her things on your own as well? Does she know this story?
No, not on my own. No, not that I sat down with her. No. By occasionally, if something came up, I would say, don't leave anything on your plate. Your grandmother died of starved to death, or things like that.
Have you ever gone back to Brno, or I mean, other than the times that you
Yes,
mentioned?
in 1980,
Right.
on the second transport of the American Jewish Congress, we went to with a group of people to finding your roots of Eastern Germany. They couldn't get 40 people together, they only got 24 together. And I went back to Theresienstadt, where I did not remember anything. I went back to Stutthof, which my wife can tell you, had a great impact on my wife. I went together with my brother and my sister-in-law. I went there to say Kaddish at a crematorium. They had some kind of a display, and there was a skull in it, and I can't forget that, because who knows, maybe the skull is from my mother, what do I know? We were in Poland, we went to Auschwitz, but I was never in Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a museum under glass cases, while Stutthof was like, you left it yesterday. My wife told you about Stutthof. Stutthof brought back memories for me. Also, I was only 2 months there. I have never gone back to Salaspils. I have never gone back to Riga. Also, the opportunity came and went. Maybe one of those days I will go.
Do you think a lot about your experiences? Do you dream about them?
Yes. I don't dream a lot about them, but when I dream once in a while, I have enough.
Why do you think you survived?
Luck, fate, God's will, if you want to. I mean, pick what you want, because let me point out to you, a whole transport usually was with 1,000 people. And sometimes all 1,000 were killed. Nobody survived. Regardless whether you're young, old, willing, able to work, you just went to the crematorium and that was it. So if you were one in those transports, you had no chance whatsoever. There were many people much smarter than I am, much better than I am, and they did not survive. Luck, fate, you pick it.
Why did you decide or choose to tell your story now?
I want my daughter to realize some of the things I might have done or behaved like, so she gets a better understanding of me.
We're coming to the end. Do you want to add anything to your story?
Yes, I want to thank Steven Spielberg and his family for making that possible. He does it. I think he realizes it, but I don't know really whether he does. He does a job. The money which is spent on that is very worthwhile. And I want to thank him.
I want to thank you for sharing your story. We are going to end this tape in a few minutes, but we will show your pictures and some of your documents on the next tape. And thank you very much, Mr. Pick.
You're welcome.